Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today and participating in this public meeting to discuss the 2020 Water and Wastewater Rate Study. I'm Terry Pecars, Municipal Utilities Director for the City of Tempe, and with me today is Tara Ford, Deputy Municipal Utilities Director over our Water Utilities Division. We also have several other city staff on the line to both facilitate the meeting and facilitate questions and answers afterward. Tara and I are here to talk to you today about this year's water and wastewater rate study and seek your input as we carry out this process. The last water and wastewater rate study was conducted in 2017 with a corresponding rate increase implemented in 2018. The city conducts cost of service or rate studies every 2 years with the assistance of a financial services consulting firm. Stantec is our consultant for this year's rate study and has been working with the city in conducting cost of service rate studies for our enterprise fund since 2015. Two of the key objectives of this process are one, to develop a study in a manner that's consistent with the principles and methodologies established by the American Water Works Association, which is industry standard in the US, and two, to develop a cost allocation methodology that equitably allocates the cost of providing water services to the city's various types of customers. Your input is very important to us, and we'd like to answer any related questions you may have. Please use the chat feature on WebEx to submit your questions and feedback, and we will address as many questions as we can following the presentation. And ones we can't, we will follow up with you via email or via phone call. We're also recording this public meeting so others who couldn't be here today can view it later and provide their input and comments as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to talk to you about why we perform utility rate studies, such as the water and wastewater rate study, discuss factors affecting the cost to manage, operate, and maintain our water utility and the need for cost recovery, share information on ongoing efforts and advancements since our last rate study in 2017, discuss next steps as we work through the rate study process, and answer any questions and take any input you may have. Why do we perform rate studies? Well, as many of you know, the city's water utility is an enterprise fund. An enterprise fund is a self-supporting government fund that sells goods and services to the public for a fee. Examples include water and wastewater utilities and solid waste operations. Enterprise fund departments do not receive tax dollars as their funding source, as do general fund departments. Establishing cost-based rates, fees, and charges is an important component in a well-managed and operated water utility. Cost-based rates provide sufficient funding to allow communities to build, operate, maintain, and reinvest in their water and wastewater systems that provide the community with safe and reliable drinking water and fire protection, as well as safe and reliable collection and treatment of wastewater. Properly and adequately funded water systems also allow for the economic development and sustainability of the community. For near-term financial planning purposes, we utilize a projection period of 10 years. This time frame provides a reasonable forecast of anticipated revenue needs, thereby assisting management, policymakers, and the public to foresee potential revenue shortfalls under existing rates and to avoid surprises when future changes at rate levels are requested. Projections in the 10-year planning horizon are also typically sufficient to satisfy investors, bond rating agencies, and other interested parties. Our rate structure classifies customers as either commercial or residential, with the residential classification further classified into either single family or multifamily. Cost-based water rate utility making is one in which costs are recovered or revenues collected from those customers who cause the cost to be incurred. Understanding that no rate policy is perfect, the objective is to distribute revenue responsibilities to the customer classes in proportion to the demands that those customer classes place on the water system. Demands include the cost of additional infrastructure necessary to ensure water delivery at the volume, quality, and pressure required during times of peak demand or consumption. This rate-making methodology is in accordance with industry best practices. There are several components to a comprehensive water and wastewater rate study. The utility's revenue requirements represent the total amount of money the utility must collect from customers to pay all costs of providing the service. This is determined by identifying all current and estimated future operations and maintenance and capital costs over a 10-year period. This process ensures that the utility will have enough revenue to fund services and meet its reserve fund balance policy. Cost allocation is the process by which costs are recovered appropriately and proportionately from different customer classes based on their respective water demand characteristics. This is achieved by reviewing all customer classifications water demand characteristics, including historical customer class water usage and peaking characteristics, along with emerging demographic and conservation trends to determine the true cost of providing service to each customer class. Rate design is the development of the most appropriate rate structure to satisfy an organization's strategic and operational goals. These objectives range from promoting water efficiency and conservation to minimizing customer affordability concerns to promoting economic development. Rate design also includes analysis of the impact of proposed rate adjustments or rate structure changes to the utility customers. This analysis includes seeking feedback from city leadership, city council, and the community and making adjustments where appropriate. Communication throughout this process is key to ensuring utility customer involvement and understanding by all involved of the rate study process and data, the potential need for adjustments, national trends, and council priorities. Active stakeholder participation is an effective way of involving parties representative of the community served and the respective customer classes, receiving input and ensuring transparency, and is vital to a comprehensive rate study process. There are several factors that affect costs and cost recovery. It's the responsibility of the water utility to effectively manage and optimize the city's water and wastewater assets through their entire life cycle. This begins at conceptual design and continues through shutdown, decommissioning, or replacement. Thorough planning, analysis, and timely execution allow appropriate data-driven decision-making to occur to ensure reliable and cost-effective service delivery. Our water utility fund balance is currently favorable above policy, so we have the financial resources necessary to address aging infrastructure and treatment technology needs. We continue making significant investments in water infrastructure, including replacement of water and wastewater pipes and mains, and completion of assessments and upgrades to our treatment plants. Water system efficiency is the ability to move water across and within the system from various sources. Current system limitations are being addressed via rehabilitation of groundwater wells and pumping systems and siting and land acquisition for new groundwater wells. System efficiency and greater redundancy also contribute to our drought preparedness efforts, as does the assessment of our currently decommissioned water reclamation plant as a potential additional source of water. Wastewater capacity issues include the Tempe Town Lake underground siphon and the SRO pipeline ownership. Water treatment technology improvements throughout the system, including at well sites, treatment plants, and storage tanks, are necessitated by emerging water quality regulations such as the disinfection byproduct rule, of which TTHMs are a constituent, the pending revised lead and copper rule, and the pending PFAS rule. The cost to provide water and wastewater services continues to increase nationwide. This slide shows the cost of water services in cities throughout the United States. The dollar amount indicated for each respective city is the monthly bill calculated for a family of 4 using 100 gallons per person per day. Costs vary based on factors discussed previously, including the age of the water system infrastructure for that city, system capacity and efficiency, regulatory requirements, and emerging regulations, etc. Tempe's calculated bill is indicated in orange on the slide, and as you can see, is currently significantly lower than many U.S. cities. Water and wastewater treatment, delivery, and conveyance is the most capital intensive of all utility services. Historically underpriced water and wastewater system cost increases have outpaced the U.S. Consumer Price Index or normal inflation. Some of the driving factors behind these cost increases include infrastructure investment, drought preparedness, securing or developing of water sources, population patterns, conservation efforts, regulatory requirements, the need for increasingly well-trained and certified staff, more and more complex laboratory analysis and regulatory monitoring, and higher customer service expectations. These costs are impacting cities nationwide, with some being impacted more significantly than we are currently here in Tempe. Several important initiatives and advances have been accomplished since we last performed a water rate study in 2017. These include implementation of the Advanced Metering Infrastructure, or AMI, and WaterSmart Customer Portal, increased customer outreach and education, and the Water Efficiency Certification Pilot Program, which Tara will review over the next few slides.
AMI, or Advanced Metering Infrastructure, is the foundation for monitoring water efficiency. Paired with WaterSmart technology, AMI allows customers to regularly monitor their water usage. In the first quarter of 2019, AMI was completely installed throughout the city of Tempe to allow for two-way communication over a fixed network between the city and the metering endpoints. AMI is a full measurement and collection system that includes meters at the customer site, communication networks between the customer and the city, and data reception and management systems that make the information available to the city. In April of 2019, the City of Tempe launched WaterSmart. WaterSmart technology is our online customer dashboard that connects customers with their water usage data. Customers can review daily and hourly water usage, quickly find potential leaks, and view historical water use trends. They can compare water usage to similar households in the same zip code, and they can get conservation recommendations and alerts when unusual water usage is detected. AMI data is also utilized by the city to identify trends in water demand to more fully understand the impacts of a variety of conditions on demand characteristics, thereby informing operational decision-making and planning efforts. Now, this slide demonstrates how AMI contributes to timely, data-driven decisions. The two graphs indicate residential and commercial water demands for the period of January through May of 2019 and 2020. The gray and black regions represent 2019 data, and the orange line represents 2020 data. Water demand over the period of March 10th through March 25th of 2020 was significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. As commercial businesses closed and the economy slowed, overall water demand decreased by approximately 12% from the previous year throughout the entire system. As indicated in the bottom graph, Tempe's commercial customers' water usage decreased by approximately 35% during this period. The benefits of AMI and WaterSmart on the customer side can only be realized when customers are registered and interacting with their water usage data. The only way to achieve this is through outreach, marketing, and education. Following the rate increase in 2018 at Council's urging, we increased outreach to residential customers. Our outreach efforts included 64 neighborhood pop-ups and events, 56 occurrences of print media, and numerous social media posts. In 2019, more than 200 local outreach events were conducted, resulting in an estimated 1.4 million impressions. Direct email campaigns and one-on-one conversations were the most successful, especially when supported by print and social media. Then in 2020, we also incorporated direct calls to large volume residential customers that were not yet registered with WaterSmart. So beginning in March of 2020, we called every large volume residential customer not yet registered on WaterSmart to ensure they were aware of the program, and we encouraged them to register and sign up for alerts ahead of the summer high water use peak demand season. During this robust outreach effort, staff made 2,586 phone calls and had 702 live conversations and left 844 voicemails. Attempts will be made to reach invalid phone numbers using alternative numbers provided in the billing system. The phone calls were a big success. They were able to connect staff one-on-one with residents in a proactive way. And through these calls, we discovered that several residents were not aware of WaterSmart, while others had heard of it but were not sure how they would benefit. Many residents had other questions, and staff was able to provide applicable information for those questions. Now in this graph, you'll see it represents the increases in WaterSmart registration and customer consultations since our last rate study. If you look at the left side of this graph, you will see the increase in WaterSmart registration as it coincides with our outreach efforts through consultations as presented on the right side of the graph. Through WaterSmart outreach, we increased the total customers from 414 in 2018 to 4,164 in 2019. And our current registration for 2020 as of June is 7,160. At the end of 2018, less than 1% of our customers were registered. In 2019, the number of registrations increased to 9.7%, and current registration as of June 2020 is at 16.4%. Intensified outreach increased interest and participation in several of our programs from customers across the city. The number of water consultations provided increased by 189% from 2018. We also received a higher number of phone calls from customers with varying questions and requesting assistance. In some cases, a phone consultation was sufficient. However, in other cases, these phone calls led to on-site consultations. In 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we began offering video consultations. These are considered normal water consultations, but offered virtually through video apps like Google Duo and FaceTime. Now, this Water Smart alerting function, it's alerting residents to potential leaks. It turned out that at the end of 2019, they had 13,877 potential leak alerts automatically sent through Water Smart, saving an estimated 20.3 million gallons of water. The Water Smart algorithm that generates this alert is based on the threshold of more than 6 gallons per hour used for at least 72 hours consistently. Again, these alerts are estimated by WaterSmart to have saved 20.3 million gallons of water. As we work to further Council's priority of large volume residential customer outreach and assistance, the Water Efficiency Certification Pilot Program, or WEC, was launched in September of 2019 after having been approved by Council in June of 2019. This program provides single-family residential customers the opportunity to avoid being billed at a Tier 5 rate over a period of 1 year if they demonstrate water efficiency efforts. The program was promoted from August to December of 2019 by postcard, email, and verbally during on-site consultations to every large volume residential customer. We currently have 48 residents certified and receiving monthly educational email communications, as well as monthly when to water text messages. Certified residents represent concerned water users from 3 zip codes, 85283, 85282, and 85284, and represent a variety of average water consumption rates and tiers 2 through Tier 5, and this 18-month pilot period will end in March of 2021. The ultimate goal of water conservation is not to discourage water use, but to maximize the benefit from each gallon used. Our programs are based on the vision to promote water use efficiency rather than sacrifice, maintain and advance quality of life, and provide customized, targeted, and intelligent programs that are tied to water and cost savings whenever possible.
Thanks, Tara. A robust water conservation and efficient water usage program, including community outreach, education, and support for water users, is a key component of a well-run water utility. This graph is indicative of the success of water conservation and efficiency efforts over the last 20+ years. The blue section indicates water demand, the green section indicates wastewater flows, and the orange line indicates population growth. As you can see in the graph, while population has increased over the period, metered water usage has either stayed flat or declined, and wastewater flows have remained essentially unchanged. You'll also note that our gallons per capita per day usage went from 168 in 2000 to 102 last year. What's not indicated in this graph is our daytime population, including businesses and industry. Despite increased population and business development, water consumption has decreased. This trend is very positive and reflective of our City Council's leadership in prioritizing sustainability and supporting water efficiency and conservation efforts, which contributed significantly to this result. It's important to note, though, that the utility's operating costs do not fluctuate significantly with demand changes. Utility costs are mostly fixed and only marginal cost savings, primarily in the area of electricity cost, would be observed with lower water demand. As during previous rate studies, a robust public outreach process to ensure broad community engagement and transparency throughout is essential, and those of you attending this webinar live or viewing the recorded presentation are an important part of this process. Our outreach process includes establishment of a stakeholder group made up of representatives of each customer class and community organizations, which has been convened and has already participated in 2 meetings, public meetings such as this one, establishment of a rate study website, which can be visited at tempe.gov/utility rate study, presentations to the Sustainability and Neighborhood Advisory Commissions, with the rate study recommendations being presented to the Tempe City Council and 2 additional public meetings being held later this fall. The 2020 Water and Wastewater Rate Study supports council priorities, safe and secure communities, and sustainable growth and development, and aligns with performance measures 1.13, achieve or exceed Safe Drinking Water Act compliance regulations for water quality 100% of the time, and 4.03, achieve the council adopted water conservation goal of less than or equal to 110 gallons of residential water use per capita per day. As a starting point for the rate study process to provide direction to our consultant, certain assumptions were necessary regarding previous policy direction. For example, it has been the consensus of council that we continue our water conservation and water efficiency efforts as previously directed, so we will continue our efforts in this area. During the last rate study, council adopted a 50% cost recovery rate structure for flood irrigation customers, which was the first rate increase for flood irrigation since 2005. If it is the consensus of council, we will either continue flood irrigation cost recovery at the current rate or make incremental increases to the rate structure to move toward full recovery of costs to provide this service. The cost basis approached for tier size and tier price, where costs are associated with the demand characteristics of the single family class, has been used in previous rate studies and is an industry best practice and process. We will continue to utilize this approach during our 2020 water rate study. The purpose of this presentation was to introduce the 2020 Water and Wastewater Rate Study and seek your comments and input for consideration as we work through this process. Again, your input is very important to us, and if you haven't already, please use the chat feature on WebEx to submit your questions and feedback, and we will address as many questions as we can during the remaining time. And if there are questions we can't answer or don't have a complete answer to, we will respond to you individually. So thank you again for your participation. And at this point, I'm going to look to Mary Fowler and Steve White to help facilitate any questions that we may have received.
At this point, Terry, we don't have any, but let's give it a few minutes.
Okay.
If anyone is having trouble submitting questions and wants an email, you can email me at Mary_Fowler, Fowler, @tempe.gov. We do have a question from Gary. Should I be able to see the panelists? No, you probably cannot see them. I believe they have their cameras turned off. Okay, I have a question from David Rice. David asks, in future rates, will the multifamily tier still be higher than the lowest single family tier?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but Steve, do you have any insight on that?
We still have to go through the rate study process, but I'm not thinking at this point that the lowest tier for the single family class will be higher than the multifamily class uniform rate. There's several factors involved in that, and I can discuss that further at a later date.
I have a question from Julie Hoskin. Are you looking at new wastewater and water infrastructure that will affect rates? What are your thoughts that is needed?
Yes, we are definitely always looking at water and wastewater infrastructure. As I mentioned in one of the slides, we have a very robust CIP capital improvement program that's ongoing. We're always looking to either rehabilitate, replace, or add to our infrastructure where appropriate. As mentioned earlier, we also are evaluating the use of our currently out of service water reclamation plant and other types of capacity issues as we move through the needs of the system, and also what's being anticipated in terms of assessments and looking at where our aging infrastructure is more likely to have reached its useful life and we need to invest in. So I guess the short answer is we are always looking at those types of things. That's part of our normal process in managing the assets. As I mentioned earlier, from basically design to either replacement or decommissioning.
Okay, we have a comment. I don't believe it's a question, but it said the goal of 110 gallons per person per day, I guess, is a citywide average. I am not surprised the rate is going down, as most of the new construction is high density housing where the use per household should be less because there is less land to landscape.
That no doubt has an effect on that number as well as conservation efforts. The number, actually, we are quite a bit below that currently. We're looking to even possibly revisit that as a goal should the council choose to do so. But that's true. We are seeing those numbers, and it is based on the average for all of the customer usage combined with the population and the water demand.
I have a request from Mick Darcy to explain the $10,000 cap rate regarding wastewater.
Mary, this is Steve. I believe he's referring to the 12,000 gallon sewer cap that was implemented in 2018. And basically what that means is it is currently your winter average, which is the months of December, January, and February. You take an average of that, of your water use, and that becomes your winter average. We take 70% of that to come up with a figure for what your return flow is for single family customer class. Once that is done, that becomes your bill between May and the following April. In 2018, we instituted a sewer cap, so we assumed that no more than 12,000 gallons is going to be a return flow from single family residential homes. So if you use, for instance, a lot of outdoor irrigation in the wintertime and your winter average is higher than we deem indoor usage to be, it's capped at that 12,000 gallons.
Okay, and I apologize to anybody if I mispronounce your name. This next question comes from Bob Levian. Does ASU pay a different or preferred rate other than customers?
ASU is a commercial customer and they pay the commercial rate, which I believe is $2.59 per 1,000 gallons. So I'll check that real quick.
Okay, we'll give just a few more minutes if there are more questions. Looks like we might have another one coming in. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any more questions.
Mary, I believe there's one more from Gary.
Oh, I can't see it. I apologize. Hang on just one second. Okay, here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, he ran out of space. Okay, I'm sorry. Apologize. This is from Gary Crahenbuel. I am a 36-year resident with a half-acre of landscaping. I am in your WaterSmart program and have reduced my consumption each year for many years. Without irrigation, however, my bills continue to grow. Are there any plans to grandfather in people with large, and then he said, I ran out of space. I may have landscaped differently.
I can attempt to answer that question. I don't think there are any necessarily any plans in that regard, but I will say we appreciate your efforts in that water use and efficiency. That would be a decision of council at some point in terms of how we structure our rates and how we have established our fees and tiers. But in terms of any sort of plans or discussion about grandfathering any large lot owners or anything of that nature, that has not been discussed among city staff or our rate study consulting firm.
I have another question from Bob again. Is the high-rise density in the core place much more impact? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I can take a, let me try that one, Mary. Maybe what he's asking is about our ability to provide water service in the sort of the urban core in terms of high-rise buildings. When we as a city look at the permitting for such high-rise facilities, we have a number of code requirements in terms of fire protection, the ability to provide service, that sort of thing, and whether or not our system can support that. There are various fees that are associated with that for developers, but primarily that's to make sure that once that building is built and you either have businesses or you have residents, that we can provide sufficient water pressure, volume, and such for fire protection and for potable purposes. So the answer is we do have the capacity to provide that service currently, or we would have addressed that in terms of as the development was occurring in terms of our system as well as the needs of the building. I hope I answered your question there.
And then a question from Gary, or just my apologies. It is good that you cap the wastewater charge because the formula is wildly inaccurate for people with large landscaping water needs. And that was just a comment.
Mary, earlier there was a question from Rudolph Owens. He asked what is a Tier 5 user? And basically the answer to that is any single family resident that uses water over 40,000 gallons during any month. And then prior to that, there was an email or a question from Kurt Lehman, who asked, when will we see the results of the actual rate change? At this time, we don't. We plan on presenting potential rate adjustments to City Council in September.
Thank you, Steve. Those aren't showing up on my chat.
Mary, I just saw a new question from Robert Kawa. Has there been consideration for large lot owners to have a blended rate taking into consideration landscape rate? And I'll tackle that one. At this time, we're first of all, thank you for the question, and second, we're not looking at blending rates. We take each customer class separately and understand the revenue requirements that are needed from each customer class and develop rate structures that conform with industry standards and best practices. And that is how we'll continue to approach it.
Mary or Steve, are we seeing any additional questions or comments?
I am not.
Okay.
None on my side either.
Okay. Well, let me just take a minute to thank everyone again for their participation in this process, and we hope you'll also participate moving forward as we work through this process. As I mentioned during the presentation, your input is very important, and we definitely consider it as we're working with our consultant and preparing our recommendations for council. Again, there will be additional information on the website that was indicated during the presentation, and we will be available. There's email addresses and contact information also available should you choose to reach out to any of staff directly with questions or comments or any other kind of feedback. So we very much appreciate the involvement and the interest. And just pausing for a second to see if there are any other questions. If there aren't, I'll leave it to Mary or Steve to conclude the meeting.
Thank you, Terry.